It was a photo of two sisters in 1885, but one shadow changed everything. The Charleston estate sale had drawn collectors from across South Carolina. It was a humid Saturday morning in April 2024, and the old antebellum mansion on Meeting Street was being emptied of generations of accumulated history. Dr. Samuel Chen, a professor of American history at the College of Charleston, had come looking for Civil War-era documents, but it was a small wooden frame in a box of miscellaneous items that stopped him cold. The photograph showed two African-American women, both young, sitting side by side in what appeared to be a modest studio setting. Their dresses were simple but carefully maintained, dark fabric with white collars, the style typical of the mid-1880s. Both women looked directly at the camera with expressions that seemed to carry the weight of unspoken stories. The woman on the left appeared slightly older, perhaps in her mid-20s. Her hand rested gently on the shoulder of the woman beside her, a gesture that spoke of protection and deep connection. The second woman looked younger, maybe 20 or 21, with delicate features and an expression of profound serenity. Samuel turned the photograph over. Written in faded ink on the backing were the words, "Rose and Lily, Sisters, May 1885, Charleston." He studied the image more carefully, his trained eye picking up details casual observers would miss. The lighting was meticulously arranged, the composition formal and deliberate. This had been taken in a professional studio, an expensive undertaking for African-American women in 1885, Charleston, barely 20 years after the end of the Civil War and in the heart of the emerging Jim Crow South. But something about the photograph troubled him. He couldn't identify what it was, just an instinct honed over years of analyzing historical images. He paid the $15 the estate workers were asking and carefully placed the photograph in his bag. Back at his office, Samuel set up his equipment. He had access to high-resolution scanning technology and image enhancement software that could reveal details invisible to the naked eye. He scanned the photograph and pulled up the image on his computer. That's when he saw it. The shadows. Both women cast shadows on the backdrop behind them, as expected with studio lighting of the era. But the shadows were different. Rose's shadow on the left was crisp and natural, but Lily's shadow was strangely distorted, with thin, unnatural lines running through it, lines that didn't match the contours of her body. Samuel zoomed in, his heartbeat quickening. Behind Lily, partially obscured by her dress and the careful posing, he could see the edge of a metal stand, the kind used in Victorian photography to keep subjects perfectly still during long exposures. But those stands had another use, one that made his breath catch. They were sometimes used to hold up the dead. This was a postmortem photograph. Lily had been dead when the picture was taken. The shadow revealed what the composition had tried to hide. She wasn't sitting on her own. She was being held upright by a support hidden behind her, and the metal frame had created the strange lines in her shadow that normal light couldn't explain. Samuel leaned back, overwhelmed. This wasn't just a photograph of two sisters. It was a final portrait, a last moment together, captured by Rose before she had to bury Lily forever. He couldn't stop thinking about them. Post-mortem photographs were not unusual in the late 19th century. Photography was rare and expensive, and families often wanted a final image of a loved one. But this image felt especially heartbreaking. Two young African-American women in 1885, Charleston, one alive and one dead, sitting together in a moment frozen in time. The first step was to find out who they were. The names Rose and Lily were common, and without a surname the search would be challenging. But Samuel had experience in tracking down historical records, especially those related to African-American communities in the post-Civil War South. He started with death records. The Charleston County Register of Deeds maintained death certificates from the 1870 onward. Though records for African Americans were often incomplete or poorly maintained, Samuel requested access to the volumes from April and May 1885, reasoning that if the photograph was dated May 1885, Lily had likely died shortly before. The records room was a climate-controlled basement lined with leather-bound ledgers. Mrs. Patterson, a clerk who had worked there for 3 decades, helped Samuel locate the correct books. "Looking for anything specific?" she asked. "A young African-American woman who died in April or May of 1885, Samuel replied. "First name, Lily." Mrs. Patterson sighed knowingly. "Those records are sparse. A lot of black deaths weren't properly documented back then. Sometimes just a first name, sometimes nothing at all. It was a way of erasing people, making them invisible, even in death." Samuel began reading line by line. The ledgers were divided by date, with separate sections for white and colored deaths, a stark reminder of segregation in every aspect of life and death in the Jim Crow South. April 1885 yielded nothing, but on May 3rd, he found it. Lily-colored female, age, approximately 21, died. May 1st, 1885. Cause of death, childbirth complications. Informant, Rose, sister. Address, 47, Street. A chill washed over him. The photo was dated May 1885, likely taken days after Lily's death. And the cause, childbirth complications. Lily had died, giving birth. The entry confirmed Rose as her sister, but no surname was recorded, nor was there any mention of the baby. When Samuel visited the listed address, he found only a modern apartment building from the 1970. The original home was gone, but the street still ran through what had once been a thriving African-American neighborhood after the Civil War. He had spent the previous night researching the history of that area. And now, he stood on the sidewalk, the weight of the sisters' story beginning to settle over him. In 1885, the street and the surrounding blocks had been home to freed slaves and their descendants, many of whom worked as domestics, laundresses, dock workers, and craftsmen. It was a community forged in the crucible of emancipation, one where people who had been denied even the acknowledgement of their humanity were building lives, forming families, and insisting on their right to exist with dignity. Samuel walked the neighborhood, trying to imagine what it had looked like nearly 140 years earlier. The grand homes that lined the lower part of the street would have been there then as well. The upper blocks, where number 47 had once stood, would have been more modest wooden houses, some single-family, others split into cramped dwellings, shared by multiple households. He stopped at the Charleston County Public Library, where the local history section held city directories, maps, and property records. The 1885 Charleston City Directory listed addresses and residents, though its coverage of African-American residents was inconsistent at best. Still, Samuel found the street. Number 47 appeared as a boarding house owned by a white landlord named Herbert Ashford, with no individual residents named. Typical. African-American renters rarely appeared in such records. Their presence was acknowledged only as anonymous occupants of buildings owned by white property holders. But Samuel knew that absence in official records did not mean absence in reality. He needed other sources, church registers, burial records, personal accounts, anything that might reveal more about Rose and Lily. His next stop was the Avery Research Center for African American History and Culture on the College of Charleston campus. The center maintained extensive collections on the Low Country's black communities, including church archives, organizational documents, and oral histories. Dr. Patricia Monroe, the center's director and Samuel's colleague, greeted him warmly. "Samuel, what brings you by today?" He showed her the photograph and explained everything he had discovered. Patricia studied the image, her expression turning somber. "Postmortem," she murmured. "The sister died in childbirth. My God, how many stories like this have been lost?" "That's what I'm trying to prevent," Samuel replied. "I want to find out who they were. What happened to the baby? What happened to Rose?" Can you help me look through the church records? Patricia nodded. Most African Americans in Charleston in 1885 would have been affiliated with one of the black churches: Emmanuel, Old Bethel Methodist, Morris Brown, AME. Let's start there. They spent the afternoon going through carefully preserved church records. These documents, maintained by congregations who understood they were safeguarding not just religious history but proof of their members' existence, were often more complete than city records ever were. At Emmanuel AME's archives, they found it. A burial entry dated May 4th, 1885. Lily Thompson, age 21. Died in childbirth. May 1st, 1885. Survived by sister, Rose Thompson. Infant daughter, Lily Rose Thompson, survived. Burial at Magnolia Cemetery, Section C, unmarked grave. The discovery that Lily's baby had survived transformed everything. That evening, Samuel sat in his office, staring at the photograph with new understanding. Rose hadn't just lost her sister, she had instantly become responsible for a newborn, in an era when daily survival was a battle, especially for African American women in the Jim Crow South. The baby's name, Lily Rose, was a memorial woven into identity, honoring both mother and aunt. Samuel knew that uncovering the rest of their story would be difficult. African American women and children in 1885 Charleston left sparse paper trails. They didn't own property, rarely appeared in newspapers unless tragedy struck, and were routinely excluded from business listings. But they did appear elsewhere in census records, church membership rolls, school documents, and burial lists. Samuel would have to gather their lives from fragments. The 1890 census would have been his next source, but it had been largely destroyed in a fire. So he moved on to 1900, hoping Rose and little Lily Rose had survived the past 15 years. He combed through Charleston County census records, searching for a Rose Thompson with a daughter named Lily Rose. Hours passed spelling variations, recording errors, illegible handwriting before he finally found them. Rose Thompson, black female, age 38. Laundress. Widowed. Residence. 124 Smith Street. Household includes Lily Rose Thompson, daughter, age 15. Daughter, not niece. Rose had claimed Lily Rose as her own, giving the girl not only a home but full recognition as her child. The census also listed Rose as widowed, meaning she had married and then lost her husband sometime between 1885 and 1900. The mere fact that Lily Rose was still alive at 15 was significant. Childhood mortality was brutally high, especially in poor communities with limited access to medical care. Rose had not only protected her niece, she had raised her into adolescence while working one of the hardest, lowest-paid jobs available to black women. Samuel felt admiration rising in him. Rose had endured the death of her sister, taken in an infant, built a life, found a husband, lost him, and still carried on. And Lily Rose had survived because of her. He continued searching. In the 1910 census, he found them again. Rose Thompson, age 48 laundress. Lily Rose Thompson, age 25 seamstress. Residence, 420 Nassau Street. Both women working, both surviving. And Lily Rose now had a skilled trade. Seamstress work paid better and was far less grueling than laundry, proof that Rose had managed to give her daughter a step up. But Samuel still needed to know more about the original photograph. Why had Rose commissioned it? Postmortem photographs were expensive, and Rose would have been struggling in 1885, grieving her sister, caring for a newborn, and living in a racially oppressed society. He needed to know who had taken it. Charleston in 1885 had several photography studios, but most catered exclusively to white clients. African Americans seeking portraits had limited options, usually the few black photographers in business, or the rare white photographers willing to serve black customers. Samuel searched through business directories and newspaper advertisements from 885. He identified 3 photography studios that appeared to have served African American clients. One name appeared more frequently than any other in the small advertisements printed in the Charleston Messenger, a short-lived black newspaper of the era. George Russell, photographer for all people, with a studio on King Street. Samuel located Russell's business license records in the city archives. Russell had opened his studio in 1882 and operated it until 1894. The records listed him as colored, a term that, in Charleston's complex racial hierarchy, could indicate African American or mixed ancestry. Either way, it was clear he had served the city's black community at a time when few photographers would. More striking, Samuel found Russell's name in Freedmen's Bureau documents. Russell had been born enslaved in Charleston in 1855 and freed at age 10 when the Civil War ended. Somehow, against every imaginable barrier, he had apprenticed with a photographer during Reconstruction. By 27, he had opened a studio of his own. The true breakthrough came at the Charleston Museum, where a small collection of Russell's business papers, donated by his granddaughter in the 1960s, was held. Among the items were several ledger books recording clients and services. Samuel requested access and spent an afternoon carefully turning the fragile pages. Russell's handwriting was elegant and precise, each entry noting the client's name, type of service, date, and fee. On the page dated May 3, 1885, Samuel's breath caught. Rose Thompson memorial portrait with departed sister Lily. One photograph, $3.50. Paid in full. In 1885, $3.50 was roughly equivalent to about $100 today. A staggering amount for a laundress, earning only a few dollars a week. Rose had spent nearly a week's wages, perhaps more, to secure this final image. Then Samuel noticed a note Russell had written in the margin. Sister died in childbirth. Baby survived. R took photograph to send to mother in Alabama. Only image of Lily that exists. A photograph to send to their mother. Rose and Lily had not been Charleston natives, they had come from Alabama. And somewhere in Alabama, their mother waited, unaware that Lily was gone. The revelation added a deeper sadness to the story. Samuel imagined Rose holding the photograph, understanding she would soon have to send it along with the news that would shatter a mother's heart. He expanded his search to Alabama records, though he knew it would be difficult. Without knowing the specific region, he had to cast a wide net. He began with migration patterns and newspaper notices from the early 1880, a period of significant internal movement among African Americans. Some moved seeking work, others fled, escalating racial terror as Reconstruction collapsed and white supremacist Redeemer governments regained control. At the South Carolina Historical Society, he located a collection of letters written by African Americans in Charleston to family in other states, rare, fragile remnants of lives otherwise erased. In a box labeled 1880 correspondence, he found a letter that made his pulse quicken. Dated March 1883. Written in careful but uncertain handwriting. Dear Mama, we arrived safe in Charleston after 4 days' travel. The city is big and loud, but we found a room on Cumming Street. Lily has work in a big house doing laundry, and I found work too. We are together and safe. We miss you and James and everyone. But Mama, we could not stay after what happened to Papa. Here we can start new. Please write to us at 47 Cumming Street. Your daughters, Rose and Lily Thompson. Samuel felt tears sting his eyes. Here they were, alive on the page, explaining their flight from Alabama. And the line, after what happened to Papa, hinted at violence or tragedy. He searched for more letters, but found none. What he did find, however, was a draft of a letter written 2 years later. Dated June 1885. In the handwriting of Reverend Joshua Williams of Emmanuel AME Church. Mrs. Sarah Thompson. Rural Route 2, Montgomery, Alabama. Dear Mrs. Thompson, I am writing to inform you that your daughter Lily passed from this life on May 1st, 1885 following complications in childbirth. She gave birth to a daughter who survived, and who Rose is caring for. Lily was laid to rest at Magnolia Cemetery on May 4th with a proper service. Rose is including a photograph taken before the burial, so you may see Lily one last time. She wanted you to know that Lily did not suffer greatly, and that her final words were for you. I regret to carry such heavy news. Reverend Joshua Williams, Emmanuel AME Church, Charleston *. The letter had never been sent. Someone, perhaps the Reverend, perhaps a later archivist, had kept it, and it eventually found its way into this collection. But its existence confirmed Rose's intention. She had meant for her mother in Montgomery to receive the photograph. Now Samuel had a location: Montgomery. He traveled to the Alabama Department of Archives and History and spent a week combing through records. He was searching for the Thompson family, particularly anything that might explain what happened to Papa. Montgomery in the early 1880s was a crucible of racial violence. After Reconstruction's end in 1877, black political and economic gains were crushed through intimidation, fraudulent laws, and routine terror. Newspapers of the era rarely reported violence against African Americans, and when they did, it was framed with racist contempt. Still, sometimes facts slipped through. In the Montgomery Advertiser, January 1883, he found it buried on page 6. Negro man shot dead. A colored man named Thompson was shot and killed Saturday night near the rail yards. Authorities say he was involved in a dispute over wages. No arrests have been made. No first name. No family details. But the timing fit perfectly. If this was their father, killed in January 1883, then Rose and Lily's departure for Charleston in March made tragic sense. And suddenly, their entire journey fleeing Alabama, starting anew in Charleston. The photograph. The baby fell into place with heartbreaking clarity. Samuel searched for more context and found it in an unexpected source, a report compiled by the Freedmen's Bureau during its final years of operation. The report documented acts of violence against African Americans in Montgomery County from 1880 to 1883. And within it, he discovered the entry that tied everything together. Samuel Thompson, age 47, railroad worker, shot and killed the 21st of January 1883 by foreman at rail yard after requesting payment of back wages. No charges filed. Survived by wife Sarah Thompson and 4 children. Daughters Rose, age 23, Lily, age 19, and sons James, age 16, and Samuel Jr., age 12. The full truth hit with devastating clarity. Samuel Thompson had been murdered simply for asking to be paid what he was owed. His daughters, Rose and Lily, had fled to Charleston 2 months later, refugees escaping the same racial violence that had taken their father's life. They had sought safety and a fresh start, only for Lily to die in childbirth 2 years later at just 21, leaving Rose alone with a newborn baby in a distant city. And yet Rose had found the strength, determination, and meager resources to commission a photograph, an image she intended as a final gift to her mother in Alabama. What had at first seemed like a simple postmortem portrait had become something far more profound. A message of love, grief, and remembrance, carved into a fragile sliver of history. Back in Charleston, Samuel arranged for a forensic imaging specialist at the College of Charleston to analyze the photograph. Dr. Lisa Washington, from the archaeology department, had equipment capable of revealing what the human eye could not, details hidden beneath the surface of old photographic prints. Samuel explained everything he had uncovered about Rose, Lily, and their family. Lisa listened carefully, then set to work. Under specialized lighting, Lily's distorted shadow became unmistakably clear. "The shadow is definitely the key anomaly," she said, pointing to her screen. "See these lines? That's the metal support stand, holding her upright. But there's something else." She enhanced the image further. Rose's hand rested on Lily's shoulder with so much tension that even through the dress fabric, her fingers appeared visibly strained. Her other hand, placed in her lap, held something small. Samuel had noticed it before but dismissed it as a handkerchief. Lisa zoomed in and filtered the image. Slowly, the object sharpened into view. A small, worn photograph of a man and woman. "She's holding a photograph of her parents," Samuel whispered. "Her father, the one who was murdered, and her mother waiting in Alabama." Lisa nodded, then pointed to another detail. Near the bottom edge of the photograph, what looked like the studio floor revealed faint etching, when enhanced writing scratched in deliberately, almost invisibly. "Baby girl Lily Rose, born May 1, 1885, lived." Samuel felt his throat tighten. "Rose wanted a record," he said. "She wanted proof that the baby survived." It was brilliant in its simplicity and heartbreaking in its purpose, hidden information embedded in the photograph itself, ensuring that even if every official record vanished, the truth would remain. "Rose created more than a postmortem portrait," Lisa said softly. "She created a family archive, her parents in the photograph she's holding, herself and Lily in the main portrait, her niece in the hidden text. 3 generations in one frame." Over the following weeks, Samuel continued tracing the family's path after 1910, the last census year, where Rose and Lily Rose appeared together. By 1920, Rose Thompson, now 60, was still living in Charleston and still working as a laundress. Lily Rose, however, had married. Under the name Lily Rose Williams, age 35, she appeared living on Phillip Street with her husband, Marcus Williams, a carpenter, and their 3 children. The baby born on the day her mother died had grown up, had married, had built a family. Rose's death certificate from 1923 revealed she died of pneumonia at 63. The informant listed was Lily Rose Williams, the niece Rose had raised as her own child, the one who stayed with her until the end. She was buried at Magnolia Cemetery near her sister Lily, though both graves had long since lost their markers. Samuel's final breakthrough came when he searched for living descendants. Through records of births, marriages, and census logs, he traced Lily Rose's lineage forward across 4 generations. Eventually, in a small apartment in North Charleston, he found Evelyn Thompson, age 78, the great-great-granddaughter of Lily Rose Williams, and therefore the great-great-great-granddaughter of the Lily, who died in 1885. When Samuel called to explain what he had uncovered, the line fell silent before Evelyn finally spoke, her voice shaking. "We have a photograph of my great-great-grandmother, but we never had anything older. All our stories started in the 1920. We never had proof before." Well, it's a menace to great, go didn't tell you Sid. We have a 19. They met soon after. Samuel arrived with the precious photograph, protected in archival housing, along with copies of every document he had uncovered: death certificates, census pages, church records, and the heartbreaking draft letter that had never been sent to Alabama. Evelyn's apartment was modest but immaculate, filled with small details that spoke of careful pride and quiet resilience, just like the generations of women whose story Samuel had finally pieced back together. Family photographs filled an entire wall of Evelyn's apartment, faces spanning generations, all unknowingly connected to that single image from 1885. When Samuel carefully handed her the restored photograph, Evelyn held it with trembling hands, tears running freely down her cheeks. "That's them," she whispered. "That's Lily and Rose. My grandmother, Lily Rose's daughter, always told us about them. She said Rose was the strongest woman she ever knew. She said Rose raised Lily Rose alone after her mother died. And she always talked about a photograph Rose treasured, but it was lost after Rose passed. We thought it was gone. Forever." Samuel described everything he had uncovered, how Samuel Thompson had been murdered in Montgomery, how Rose and Lily fled to Charleston, how Lily had died giving birth, how the photograph held a hidden message preserving the infant's survival, and how Rose had fought to document their story despite poverty and danger. Evelyn listened through tears, nodding as pieces of family lore finally clicked into place. "It all makes sense now," she said. "Grandma always told us there was violence in Alabama, that Lily Rose's grandfather was killed. She said Rose never remarried after her husband died, that she gave everything to raising Lily Rose. She worked until her hands were raw and her back bent. Rose paid nearly a week's wages for this photograph," Samuel said. "She made it to send to her mother in Alabama so she'd know what happened to Lily." "Did it ever reach her?" Evelyn asked. "I don't know," Samuel admitted. "I found a draft of a letter, but no proof it was sent. Mail was unreliable, especially for black families, and Rose's mother may not have been able to read. Many couldn't in that era." "No." 3 months later, Samuel organized an exhibition at the Avery Research Center titled Shadows of History, One Photograph's Hidden Story. At its heart was the portrait of Rose and Lily, but the exhibition expanded to tell a larger narrative. African American women in the post-Civil War South. The role of postmortem photography as both art and testimony, the trauma of migration, and the enduring bonds of family across distance and death. High-resolution enlargements revealed every detail the forensic analysis had uncovered. The shadow that confirmed Lily's death, the small photograph of their parents in Rose's hand, Rose's tense grip on Lily's shoulder, and the faint, hidden inscription recording baby Lily Rose's birth and survival. Surrounding these images were the documents Samuel had collected, the death certificates, church records, census pages showing Rose raising her niece, and the draft letter addressed to Alabama. Additional panels provided context about racial violence in Montgomery, the harsh realities faced by African American women in Charleston, maternal mortality, and the cultural significance of postmortem portraiture. But the most powerful part of the exhibition came from Evelyn. She contributed her own family photographs, 5 generations of descendants. Images of Lily Rose as a young woman, her children, her grandchildren, and finally Evelyn herself, with her children and grandchildren. A panel beside these photos read, "This is what Rose's sacrifice created. By raising Lily Rose, by keeping her alive through poverty and hardship, Rose ensured that Lily's line would continue. Today, more than 50 descendants of Lily Thompson live in South Carolina, Georgia, and beyond. Teachers, nurses, business owners, artists, and students all exist because Rose refused to let her sister's death be the end of their story." The exhibition opened on the 1st of May 2024, exactly 139 years after Lily Thompson died giving birth to her daughter. Evelyn arrived with more than 20 relatives spanning 4 generations. They gathered silently before the portrait, many crying, all connected by that moment, frozen in time. Samuel gave a short talk about how he had discovered the photograph and reconstructed the family's history. Then he handed the floor to Evelyn, who spoke about what it meant to finally see the faces of ancestors whose lives had once seemed irretrievable. "For so long, our family history was just stories," she said. "Stories nobody outside our home believed or cared about. But this photograph is proof they lived, they mattered, they loved each other. Rose and Lily were real people with dreams. They survived violence and heartbreak, and they created a family that continues today." She gestured to the relatives gathered behind her. "We are Rose's legacy. Every one of us exists because she picked up that newborn baby girl and chose to fight for her survival. She could have given Lily Rose to an orphanage. She could have walked away, but she didn't. She claimed her, raised her, sacrificed everything for her. And because of that, we're all here." The exhibition ran for 6 months, becoming one of the most visited in the Avery Research Center's history. People stood for long stretches in front of the photograph, absorbing its layers, reading the story, understanding that even the most ordinary lives hold extraordinary depth. Working with Evelyn and her family, Samuel arranged for proper grave markers to be placed for Rose and Lily in Magnolia Cemetery. On a warm spring morning, their descendants gathered, joined by members of Emmanuel Church, Avery Research Center representatives, and Samuel himself. The markers were simple but dignified. Rose Thompson, 1,860. 1,923. Daughter. Sister. Mother. She kept the promise. Lily Thompson, 1,864. 1,885. Daughter. Sister. Mother. Her love lives on. Standing there, Samuel thought about the photograph that had started everything. The impossible shadow that had first caught his attention had, in a deeper sense, illuminated an entire hidden history. It had restored the identities of two women, almost lost to time. It had reconnected a family to its roots. And it had shown that even the most fragile relic can carry truths powerful enough to cross centuries. Before donating the original photograph to the Avery Research Center, Evelyn had it reproduced so every family member could have a copy. "It belongs to all of us now," she told Samuel. Rose made sure this image survived because she wanted to be remembered. And now, she will be. Samuel kept a copy in his office. Whenever he felt overwhelmed by the weight of the stories that could never be recovered, he looked at it and reminded himself, every life leaves traces. Every person matters, and if you pay close enough attention to the shadows, you can uncover truths that have been waiting more than a century to be found. The shadow in the photograph, the distorted shape that first revealed Lily's death, had become a metaphor for his work. Shadows point toward what is hidden. They tell researchers where to look, what questions to ask, what has yet to be understood. Rose and Lily Thompson were no longer anonymous faces in a faded portrait. Their lives, their love, their courage had been restored and honored. And through that single image, created in a Charleston studio in May 1885, a final gift from one sister to another, their story had become timeless. In that shadow, Samuel had found not only death, but life. Life that persisted, love that endured, and courage powerful enough to echo across the centuries.